Imagine this. You're born into a world where every decision you make, what you wear, how you speak, what you believe is already decided for you. Not by law, not by nature, but by something far more subtle, something invisible, something so powerful that it can shape your entire identity without your permission. In that force is social norms. You don't see them. You don't vote for them. But they decide how you live. And what's even more shocking, you help enforce them every single day without even knowing it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We think we're free. We think we make our own choices. But from the moment we're old enough to speak, we're handed a script. Smile when you're spoken to. Don't speak too loudly. Sit still. Be nice. Don't be too different. We'll blend in. Be normal. And so we learn day by day that survival doesn't mean being true to who we are. It means becoming who others expect us to be. And we convince ourselves that this makes us good. That being accepted is the same as being right. But deep inside, something aches. Something whispers, "This isn't me." The philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau once wrote, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." But these chains aren't iron. They're ideas. They're expectations. They're the pressure to conform, to obey, to fit in. And the scariest part, most people don't even realize they're wearing them. They laugh when others laugh. They nod when others nod. They follow trends, not because they believe in them, but because standing out feels like standing alone. And for the human mind, few things are more terrifying than isolation. Let's go even deeper. Think about the last time you changed your opinion, not because you were convinced, but because it was easier to agree. Think about the last time you stayed silent when you wanted to speak. Why did you do it? Was it fear? Was it habit? Or was it something else, something ancient? Evolutionary psychologists tell us that conformity is wired into our survival instincts. In early human tribes, being cast out meant death. So we adapted. We learned to read the room, to mimic the group, to suppress dissent. And while the world has changed, the wiring hasn't. Solomon Asch proved this in one of the most famous psychological experiments of the 20th century. In his study, participants were shown a line and asked to match it to one of 3 other lines. The answer was obvious. But when actors in the room all gave the wrong answer, most real participants conformed even when they knew it was wrong. They didn't just go along, they started to doubt their own eyes. That's how powerful social pressure is. It can override logic. It can silence truth. It can make you betray yourself just to avoid standing out. Now ask yourself, how many of your beliefs are truly yours? Not your family's, not your culture's, not your religion's, yours. How many of your habits were chosen and how many were inherited? How often do you do things just because that's how it's done? We think we're in control, but most of us are just running programs we never chose. We're living scripts written by people we've never met. And the tragedy is, we call it freedom. Here's where it gets darker. Social norms don't just shape behavior, they shape morality. What's considered right or wrong in one culture might be the opposite in another. In some societies, questioning authority is noble. In others, it's treason. In some, individualism is celebrated. In others, it's condemned. So what does that mean for you? It means your sense of good and evil may not be grounded in truth, but in tradition, in collective agreement, in conformity. Nietzsche once said, "Morality is the herd instinct in the individual." Think about that. What you call conscience might just be conditioning. And yet we don't rebel. Why? Because social norms don't use violence, they use shame. They make you feel like you're the problem, like you're broken for being different, like your truth must be hidden to protect harmony. And so we learn to wear masks. We become actors in a play we didn't audition for. And the longer we play the role, the more we forget who we really are underneath. But there's another side to this story. Social norms aren't always bad. They build trust. They create order. They help societies function. If everyone drove on whatever side of the road they wanted, we'd have chaos. Norms give us rhythm, ritual, predictability. But the danger comes when we stop questioning them. When we confuse what is common with what is correct, when we accept tradition as truth. Here's where philosophy becomes your weapon. Socrates, perhaps the greatest questioner of all time, was sentenced to death for challenging the norms of Athens. His crime? Corrupting the youth by teaching them to think, to ask, to dig beneath the surface. And that's exactly what we must do today. Because the true enemy of freedom isn't tyranny. It's unconsciousness. It's the slow, silent surrender to what everyone else is doing. The minute you stop asking why, you become a slave, even if you feel free. So what can you do? The first step is awareness. Start noticing the rules you follow without thinking, the words you censor, the outfits you choose, the opinions you hide. Then ask yourself, who am I doing this for? What am I afraid would happen if I stopped? Would they reject me? Mock me? Leave me? And if the answer is yes, then ask the deepest question of all. Why am I trying so hard to be accepted by people who wouldn't love me for who I really am? Because here's the truth. The price of conformity is authenticity. And the longer you trade your truth for approval, the more you disappear. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Until one day you wake up and don't recognize the face in the mirror. You've become a collage of expectations, a mosaic of other people's desires. And the worst part, you did it to yourself. But there's hope, because the moment you become aware of the change, you can start to break them. You can stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what do I think? You can stop following the path laid out for you and start carving your own. It won't be easy. You'll lose people. You'll face judgment. But you'll gain something far more valuable yourself. And in that moment, something incredible happens. You stop needing permission. You stop needing applause. You realize that being misunderstood isn't a curse. It's a sign you're finally being real. That standing alone isn't loneliness, it's liberation. That the world doesn't need more copies, it needs more originals. It needs you. So let me ask you again, what would you do if no one was watching? Who would you be if you stopped performing? What truth have you buried so deep, even you forgot it was there? Because until you answer that, you're not living. You're conforming, and life is too short to be anything but real. Let's continue our descent not into darkness, but into clarity. The chains of social norms are not held in our hands. They're wrapped around our minds, and the terrifying part is not that we can't break them. It's that we forget they're even there. You scroll through your feed, you see what's trending. You feel a quiet pressure: smile this way, pose like that, say this, never say that. And you don't even pause to ask why. The pressure doesn't scream, it whispers. And those whispers become your inner voice. We often think of conformity as something imposed by others. But over time, it becomes internalized. You start to police yourself. You hold back your laughter if it's too loud. You shrink your dreams if they don't fit the mold. You pretend to be less intelligent, less ambitious, less emotional, so you don't make others uncomfortable. And the scariest part, you start rewarding yourself for it. You call it maturity, or fitting in, or being realistic. But what if it's not growth? What if it's just fear in disguise? Let's examine how this plays out in our lives. From school to social media, from dinner tables to dating apps, we are constantly performing. We are editing ourselves, filtering ourselves, branding ourselves. We become curators of our own identity. Not to express who we are, but to be liked, to be safe, to be approved. And with every act of self-censorship, we drift further from who we really are. Until one day we can't hear our own voice over the noise of what we're supposed to be. Now pause. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you did something just because it was expected? Not because you believed in it, not because it aligned with your values, but simply because it was easier, more comfortable, safer. We all do it. But the danger is cumulative. Every time we choose comfort over authenticity, we reinforce the system. We strengthen the cage, and we become complicit in our own imprisonment. The philosopher Erich Fromm once said, "The majority of men have not yet become individuals." They are still automata in the sense that they experience themselves as what they think they ought to be, rather than what they are. That's not just a quote, it's a mirror. We've mistaken imitation for identity. We've mistaken popularity for truth. And we've mistaken silence for peace. Let's talk about how this plays out in culture. In some societies, obedience is the highest virtue. In others, it's independence. But in both, the social norms are enforced, not by laws, but by reactions. A raised eyebrow, a cold shoulder, a joke at your expense. These are the tools of social control. You don't need to be arrested to be punished. You just need to be excluded, ignored, laughed at. And so we learn to stay in line, not because we believe in the rules, but because we fear the response. But this isn't just a social issue, it's a psychological one. The human brain is wired for connection. We are tribal creatures, and tribal creatures fear exile more than death. That's why, in Asch's conformity experiment, people knowingly gave the wrong answer. They weren't stupid. They were afraid of standing out, afraid of being the lone voice of dissent. And that fear left unchecked becomes a habit, a mindset, a prison. Even more alarming is how social norms shape our perception of reality. If everyone around you believes something, you start to believe it too, even if it's absurd. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. Think about it. What if you were raised in a different time, a different place, with different values? Would you be a different person? The answer, almost certainly, is yes. Which means the person you are now is not just a product of your soul, but of your surroundings. That should humble you. That should terrify you. But it should also empower you. Because if you were shaped, you can reshape. If you were conditioned, you can decondition. And if you've been performing your whole life, you can stop. You can sit with yourself in silence and ask, who am I really? Who would I be without the applause, without the expectations, without the pressure to conform? This isn't easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Because the moment you stop conforming, you start losing people, friends, followers, maybe even family. But here's the truth. Anyone who only loves you when you're performing doesn't love you, they love the act. And letting go of those relationships isn't loss. It's liberation. Take a moment to think about your deepest fear. Not the fear you tell others. The real one. The one that keeps you awake at night. For many of us, it's not failure. It's not death. It's rejection. Being unloved, unseen, unwanted, and social norms exploit that fear. They offer a trade, fake acceptance for real silence. But what if that trade is the reason you feel so empty? Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege comes with a cost, discomfort, disapproval, and detachment from the herd. It means choosing truth over tradition, authenticity over approval. It means being willing to walk alone, not out of arrogance, but out of integrity. But here's the paradox. When you stop conforming, you don't lose connection, you find real connection. Not the kind that's based on masks and mirrors, but the kind that's based on soul, on shared values, on mutual recognition. You attract people who see you, not your persona. And that kind of connection is rare, sacred, worth the cost. Still, there's a reason so few people do this. It's because social norms feel like gravity, constant, invisible, inescapable. But that's an illusion. History is full of people who broke the norms and changed the world. Galileo defied the church. Martin Luther King Jr. defied segregation. Malala defied silence. They weren't special. They were just unwilling to accept the script. And their courage didn't make them safe, but it made them real. Now I want to ask you a question that could change your life. Are you living a life that's true or one that's merely acceptable? Are your values your own or inherited? Are your dreams yours, or were they handed to you like a costume? Because if you don't answer these questions, life will answer them for you. And you may not like the answer. But there's another way. You can become conscious. You can begin to observe the norms you've absorbed. You can start peeling away the layers of performance. Maybe not all at once. Maybe slowly. But with each layer you remove, something beautiful begins to emerge, your actual self. Not the one you created to survive, the one you were born with. And once that self begins to breathe, to speak, to act, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Not comfort, not security, but freedom. Not the kind imposed by laws or granted by governments, a deeper freedom. The kind that comes when you no longer need to be anyone but you. And in that moment, the question changes. It's no longer, how do I fit in? It becomes, what do I stand for? Not, who do I need to be? But who am I becoming? So let me ask you again, and this time, answer honestly, maybe for the first time in your life. What part of yourself have you buried just to be accepted? And when will you finally dig it back up? Now that we've seen the invisible walls, now that we've felt the silent weight of social norms pressing on our thoughts, our actions, our identity, it's time to ask the final question. What happens when we break free? What happens when you stop asking, what is everyone else doing? And start asking, what do I believe? This final confrontation is not just with society, it's with yourself. Because the last and strongest chain is the internal one. The voice inside your head that says, they won't accept you. They'll laugh. They'll leave. And yet, beyond that voice, beyond the fear, is a kind of freedom most people never touch. Let's be honest, most people don't want freedom. They want comfort. They want predictability. They'd rather be accepted in a lie than rejected in truth. And that's not weakness, it's conditioning. From childhood, we're taught that being liked is a reward, and being different is dangerous. But here's the secret. Every person you admire, every soul that changed the world, every legend began by being different, by being misunderstood, by defying the norms that told them to stay quiet, to sit down, to smile politely and blend in. Think of Socrates. He asked questions no one wanted to answer. He challenged the values of Athens, exposed the contradictions of the elite, and refused to conform. They gave him a choice: stop asking questions or die. He chose death, not because he wanted to die, but because he refused to live a life of conformity. That's not philosophy. That's courage. And that's available to all of us, not in death, but in life. In the daily decision to live aligned with our truth, even when it costs us approval. But what does that look like in practice? It means saying no when everyone else says yes. It means stepping back when the crowd rushes forward. It means speaking up when silence would be safer. It means risking discomfort, not for rebellion, but for integrity. It means recognizing that the greatest act of courage in our time is not fighting the system, it's refusing to be shaped by it. Now let's dive into the psychology of this moment. When you begin to defy norms, your brain will panic. You'll feel physical discomfort. Your heart will race. Your palms will sweat. Why? Because your survival system interprets nonconformity as danger. But that's the illusion. You're not actually in danger. You're just stepping outside of the mental cage. And like any prisoner who sees the open door for the first time, you hesitate. Because freedom isn't just unfamiliar, it's terrifying. But if you stay with it, something begins to shift. You start to build a new kind of confidence, not based on applause, but on alignment. Not based on likes, but on truth. You begin to trust your voice. You begin to act from your values. And slowly the fear fades. The panic becomes presence. The discomfort becomes power. And then you realize, this is who I've always been. I was just too afraid to be it. Let's talk about identity. Most people think identity is something we discover. But in reality, it's often something we construct piece by piece based on what's rewarded by others. You're praised for being quiet, so you become reserved. You're applauded for being funny, so you become a performer. You're accepted for being agreeable, so you bury your anger. And over time, your identity becomes a collage of survival strategies. But here's the question: if you stripped away all the roles, all the masks, all the expectations, what would be left? That's your real self. The self that existed before the world told you who to be. The self that doesn't need to impress, perform, or please. And the journey of breaking social norms is the journey back to that self. It's not about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's not about shock value. It's about authenticity, about peeling away everything false, everything performative, everything that was never truly yours. But know this: when you live authentically, you become a mirror. And not everyone will like what they see. Your courage will trigger their fear. Your freedom will expose their chains. And some will attack you not because you're wrong, but because you remind them of what they gave up. That's not a reason to stop. That's proof you're on the right path. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's not a metaphor. That's a warning. The moment you step outside the norm, you will be misunderstood. People will question your sanity, your motives, your worth. But if you can stand in that storm without bending, something incredible happens. You stop needing their validation. You stop living on borrowed meaning. You become the author of your own life. And in that space, something divine awakens your vision. Not the vision given to you by society, career, status, compliance, but your true vision, the one that speaks to your soul. Maybe it's creating art that challenges the system. Maybe it's building a life that honors simplicity over success. Maybe it's loving in a way that defies the rules. Whatever it is, it won't be found in the crowd. It will be found in solitude, in silence, in the sacred space where social norms cannot reach. But even as you walk this path, remember, compassion must lead the way. The goal is not to judge those who conform, but to understand them. We've all been there. We've all bowed to pressure. We've all silenced ourselves to be accepted. So when you see someone still trapped in the performance, don't mock them. Don't shame them. Invite them. Show them by your life that another way is possible. And that's the final power of breaking norms. You become a beacon, not a preacher, not a guru, just a living example of what it looks like to be real. And in a world addicted to illusion, real is the most revolutionary thing you can be.